Hi guys, this is Mina Ahmed from Coach My Life. I'm here today to talk to you about a topic that's really difficult actually to talk about. Um, I'm going to talk about grief. It's a difficult topic to talk about, but it's an important topic to speak about. So everyone who has suffered a grief because of any reason would be able to relate to this topic quite easily. So you might be grieving because of a number of reasons. So I'm going to look at what grief is and the effects it has on us, and also then I'm going to be looking at some healing tips as well for grief. So you might be grieving because of the death of a family member, like a parent, a partner, a grandparent, a sibling, a cousin, a nephew, a niece, an uncle, a child. You may be grieving because of a death of a friend or someone you knew at school, in your neighborhood, in your local community, in your workplace or place of work. The death of someone by suicide, by tragedy, somebody who may have suffered a long-term illness and all of a sudden unexpected demise. You may be suffering the loss of a relationship that's ended, and that can be because somebody's moved away. It may be a loss of someone who's actually just cut you out of their family or cut you out of their circle of friendship. You may be suffering from grief due to losing a pet, an animal. You may be suffering because you've lost someone through a long-term condition like dementia. So you have a loss of relationship there as well. Now the thing about the brain is that it doesn't matter what type of loss you've had and what type of grief you're suffering, it fires up the same neurons in your mind. So the different types of loss will still fire up the same parts of the brain which are responsible for grief. The brain in that sense doesn't age. When we're hit with grief, it doesn't isolate one grief and say, okay, this is the grief and I'm going to concentrate on this and I'm going to be unwell with this. What happens is that the grief is collected throughout your lifetime. So if you suffered a grief when you were 18 and you suffer a grief when you're in your 60s, it collects all those griefs together, and that's why you have suffering and that suffering increases. So what is grief? It's an emotional response to loss, and it's a process rather than an event. And what I mean by that is that it's not just the event of the death of the individual, but it's the process and the journey that you're going through. It may affect the way you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and for a very long time. So the initial stages will be things like shock and horror, and then moving on to denial. There's a bit of a misconception that shock only happens when someone's died suddenly, because that's the initial shock. But the shock can last for weeks, for months, and for some people for years. And they can be in denial for a very, very long time. That denial feeds into despair, an empty feeling, something that's not right, and the world isn't how it should be. This leads on to, for some people, trauma, dreams, nervous breakdowns, and more serious conditions that they suffer through grief. It's like a feeling of being stuck and frozen, and that's how people may describe it as well. It's a difficulty for carrying out daily tasks, a difficulty in moving forward, even though the person who's had that grief knows that they need to have some level of acceptance. So acceptance is extremely difficult, and some people, just by the name of someone or a mention of a place, can get those floodgates, open again, and it's hard to contain. An extreme level of sadness, not much desire to move on without this person, is extremely painful. There's a feeling that this is happening to you and only you, like the world goes on, but you are still in that moment of loss. This then leads to a belief that because it's only happening to you or only happening to me, that it's affecting no one, and no one can understand the pain level. This results in some people withdrawing and becoming even more lonely, not wanting to have any connections, but needing them. It can be the reverse for somebody else. They may want to make new connections, and they may need those connections, and they are like oxygen for them in this time of loss and suffering. I am certainly not here to make any judgments about what it is like for any individual, because it varies immensely from person to person, situation to situation, relative to relative, and even the age of what you suffer, as in what age you are when you have that loss, you can have a totally different perspective and a different reaction. Loss is very individual. Nobody really knows how we feel or how we will react when it happens to us. And there's certainly no right or wrong way to grieve. Everybody's different, and part of that difference is some people may go to a place and reminisce and think about a memory of that loved one as they walked somewhere or they visited somewhere, and with that departed soul. And these landmarks become something really cherishing moments for those who have left behind. But the same landmarks for somebody else can become a trigger of pain and suffering as soon as they see those landmarks or those moments that they shared with the one who has departed. So you can see how different can be for each individual who is suffering with this trauma. The more losses we have, the more vulnerable we become as well. We feel quite worried that we may open the floodgates, and how are other people going to react. And this can lead to episodes of anxiety of meeting anybody, and then extreme levels of loneliness as well. It is really with a heavy heart that I'm going to tell you that, obviously, and you know as well, that COVID has made the whole process even tougher for us. We can't visit anyone, we can't see anyone in person, we can't hug them, and we can't pay our condolences in the same way that we would have perhaps before COVID. We sometimes get super stuck and frozen, like a frozen-like state, and can be really initially quite confronting. For some people it's quite comforting. People feel like they want to be stuck in that moment. They want to not let go. But some people who want to let go and hold on to the memory, it's a very big turmoil of suffering, really. The sense of betrayal creeps in very strongly. If I let go of the pain, do I forget the person who loved me so dearly? This makes us perceive ourselves as someone who's quite bad, actually. So we're kind of, in our own eyes, we feel quite bad about ourselves. Are we disloyal to that person because we're not remembering them, and we're not in constant remembrance of that person? So that's how somebody can feel quite betrayed, or feel that they've betrayed someone that they loved, who's gone and departed. If you're fortunate enough to have not lost anyone, then it's fair to say that nothing actually can prepare you for it. because it's such an individual experience, and we handle grief in and its effects really uniquely. That said, when you have had a grief and you've lost a relative that is similar to or exactly the same relative as somebody else. So, for example, if you've lost a father and somebody else you know who's lost a father, if you've lost a mother and you know someone else who's lost a mother, if you've lost a partner, husband, wife, child, and you know somebody else out there has lost that person, you will find there will just be this connection and pull, magnetic connection and pull. And it's super important for you to get that support from that person. They will understand you better. So when should I or when should anybody get professional help? Because friends and family are just amazing in this, time, and can be in circumstances where you're very lucky that you have friends and family and support around you and community that can help you through that difficult time, that difficult journey of grief. But it's also super important to know when to get professional help and when and if it's needed. It's usually other people that will spot it for you before you do, that you need help. Where there doesn't seem to be that sort of support available and people aren't noticing that you're going into a lot of depression and anxiety and you're finding it extremely difficult, it is hard to notice yourself that you are suffering that much. And you may think it's quite normal to just be in that state for a very, very long time. It might be useful if you have a pen and paper now. And the reason is because you may want to pause this video and come back to it. Because I have 5 questions to ask you. And if you feel that the answer is yes to some of these, then perhaps it's time to get some professional help. Question 1. Has the loss frozen you from the things that you love to do? So it could be a hobby that you had, an interest that you always used to go towards. Has it frozen you from that? Question 2. Has the loss felt like a huge piece of you has gone as well and is missing? Question 3. Is every waking moment consumed in grief, and that is affecting your ability to function, to move forward, and to consider your own happiness? You'll notice this when you're on your own, if that's happening for you or not. Has the grief, question 4, has the grief manifested into a physical illness or ailment that you're suffering with? And question 5, has the grief delved you into deeper anxieties or deeper depression? So have you noticed that change in your personality? So if you've noticed that, it's probably time to get a bit of professional help. And if those around you even are suffering as well because of your suffering. So a lot of benefits can come from therapy. I do something called the grief protocol. It's a short therapy, and you do remember the person that you have lost during that therapy. So you do bring those memories to the therapy. And it's just not about forgetting them, it's about giving them a loving goodbye, but also not letting them go completely, but allowing yourself to move forward as well, so that you're not stuck with any anxiety or stress or any traumas. I did the grief protocol on quite a few people recently actually, and with the permission of one of the clients that I have, actually 2 of them, they said that it's okay for me to share what their benefits were. I'm still going to keep them anonymous. So one lady, she was suffering from grief, and she didn't actually know it was grief that she was suffering from. She was extremely tired and really exhausted. And one of the benefits that she found was that when she did tap into that grief and do the loving goodbye, she found that she was able to move forward with her family. So she was able to do things that she had put on hold for a very long time. So that was very relieving for her. The second person that I did it on, he found it really useful because he explained it like being stuck and frozen, and he just couldn't get on with daily tasks, even daily things, little things. And this did help him to move forward from there, from that sort of suffering that he was constantly stuck in that. So I just want to say that I'm really sorry if anyone has lost someone who's watching this video now. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry if you've lost someone during the COVID period, because it has been the toughest time ever. I can empathise with you because I lost my sister-in-law, who's my husband's sister, during the COVID period. And only last week I've lost my uncle, my dearest uncle, my mum's brother, through cancer. So loss is painful. It affects our brain, affects our mind, affects our bodies. And it's difficult. It's a really difficult time. I know so many of my friends, and they know who they are, who've lost a loved one very recently. And I pray for everyone who's lost someone, that they have ease and they seek professional help, and they stay as strong as possible. This was a really hard video for me to do, but it's super important that we don't hide how we feel when we have grief, and there's no shame in how we feel when we feel vulnerable. In fact, we should get help and we should support one another, and this is what this group is about. You're such a lovely group as well, and you send me messages personally and privately and on the group as well, and it really, really is amazing. So I did say I was going to give you a few tips at the end, and I would like to leave you with those, some positive tips for you of how to handle the grief that you're suffering right now. So one of the ways, so number one, is that you sit calmly and collectively with that thought of that person maybe in your mind, and you try to just think of your body and connect to your body, so that you can allow your body, because the thing is, the brain kind of almost like doesn't want to connect with the body. It doesn't like it because it's scared of what it's going to find. So we need to kind of make sure that you get the opportunity in the day where you sit down and just try to connect with yourself. If you find it extremely difficult, then book in with me. If you're fine and you can do this, then please do that. So just sit really firmly, feet on the ground, sit upright, and just close your eyes and just think of what do I feel in my head, what do I feel in my face, what do I feel in my neck, in my chest, in my legs, in my arms, my feet, what do I feel in my stomach, and what do I feel in my hips, because the hips carry a lot of emotion as well. And just sit with that feeling and those feelings that are coming in your body, and try to release them. Connection is super powerful. It will get you out of your depression and anxiety that you're suffering from in that very, very moment. So that's number one. Tip number two, speak to somebody. You'd be surprised if you just send a text out, or if you send a voice note out to somebody, or if you just call someone. They're there for you. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there for you. So do that. Do reach out. Talking therapy should not be something that's sniffed at. It's really, really valuable. So those are the two main things that you can do. The other third thing that you can do is actually, people who don't like to talk, okay, then journal, write your feelings out. People who don't want to speak to other people but don't mind speaking about it to themselves, do a recording. Listen back to it if you need to, but it will relieve you and it'll give you some relief, and that's super important. We need to get some healing in there after all the losses that we've felt. I will be doing a free Zoom BWRT session, but it's not going to be on grief, and it's not going to be the grief protocol, because there's going to be too many of us and it may not be appropriate. But that said, you can come with any issue, anxiety, depression, anything that's making you feel a little bit down. obviously with this time of the year, and also with COVID, it is a really hard time and we are feeling quite lonely. So if you're feeling that, just come and connect with us. I'd really welcome you all to join, and I will put the link very, very soon and let you know the times and the day that I'm doing it. And click onto there and join us, and then and what we'll do a session together, and you'll be able to I get some relief actually, instant relief, which is great, which is what we need from something that you're suffering with right now. Take good care. It's always lovely to do these videos, and I've had quite a lot of messages this week about how the videos are benefiting you all. So I'm going to continue with this work, hopefully, as long as I can. Take good care. Thank you so much for your time that you spend as well watching this video. It's super important for me that I do get that feedback from you. And I will hopefully see you on another video. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.